Hello, everyone. This is the 12th class for social psychological perspectives on health. In the last lectures, I talked about how social identities can help individuals to reduce depressive symptoms. And one of the mechanisms that social identity can help social depression can help reduce depression is social support. So in the excuse me, in the previous literature, social support was being proposed to function to help individuals to reduce depressive symptoms. But uh, past research has not well supported this idea. And that is because social support can be ineffective when social support was provided or received between individuals who do not share group memberships. And also, social sup when people experience stress, uh, it is often a case that social support is also missing there. So basically, the reason people experience stress is because they do not have social support. And the reason why they do not have social support is that they do not, they lose their social identities. So basically, when they lose their social identity, they lose their social support, and also they lose, sorry, uh, when they lose social identity, they also lose social support, and they also experience stress. Okay. So social support cannot really buffer the impact of stress, but instead, social lack of social support is another cause of stress and co-occurrence. It co-occurs with stress. Okay. And so I talked about this model, social identity model of identity change. So basically, when people experience stress, that is because when they have to change their social identities or when they lose their social identities. And also I refer to situational, what was it? Scale for situational stress model. Was it the name? Yeah, social readjustment rating scale. Sorry, it was totally different. Social readjustment rating scale. And then in the list, you can remember that most of the events were related to loss of someone or loss of their identity. So basically, people experience stress when they experience a loss of social identity, and that's when they also do not have enough or adequate social support. Okay, and in addition to the social support, social identity can also help people to define themselves. And then the clear self-concept is very important resource for individuals to experience high well-being. And to support such idea, I talked about this study. So basically, when people belong to more groups, they tend to have fewer people tend to fewer people tend to experience depression relapse. Okay, so zero indicates they do not have groups that they have belong since the last data point, the last time they were asked about their group memberships, and one means they have one more groups that they can belong to, more or less, and three more so on. And the more the more they belong to groups, the less likely that they would experience depression relapse. So that was the idea. That was basically the main points that I covered in the last lecture. And to further back up those arguments, I'd like to talk about a few more studies, I guess. So first on, social identification is necessary for group memberships to work as a resource. So in this figure, I basically explained that the more people belong to groups, the less likely they experience depression relapse. So basically, the focus is more on the number of groups. But here, in order for groups to function as a resource, then individuals have to identify with each group. Okay? Group. Okay. So there are four explanatory variables here. And then Sunny and his colleagues examined how these four variables are related to three well-being variables. Okay. First one is education. So remember we talked about status, how status is related to our well-being. And then in accordance with social determinants of health theory, education was negatively. So basically red lines indicate the negative association between two variables. So education was negatively related to depression. So meaning that the higher their education history was, the less their depressive symptom was. Okay. And also, blue line indicates a positive association between the variables. So education was positively related to life satisfaction. Those who received higher education tend to have higher life satisfaction. Okay. And the other one, education was negatively related to stress, meaning that those with higher education experienced less stress. So pretty much consistent with social determinants of health. And they also checked age, but age was not related to any of the dependent variables. Well, maybe there are correlations, but after controlling for other variables, age was not reliable predictor of the outcomes. And what is the most important in this study was that they found strong association between family identification and outcome variables. So I think in this study, maybe, okay, I'm not sure which country they did. Maybe you can find the information in the textbook. Basically, they looked at how strongly they identify with their family. And maybe they asked how is it important for you that you are a member of your family. And those who had strong family identification had fewer depressive symptoms here. And those who had stronger family identification had higher life satisfaction. And those who had stronger family identification also experienced less stress. Okay. And then I think also there was one more interesting finding here, which was contacts with family members and relatives once in 2 weeks. So whether they had contact with their family members and relatives was only positively related to with, I mean, was re positively related with only life satisfaction, but it didn't predict their depressive symptoms or the levels of stress they experience. So it's not really how often you meet with your family members or relatives, but what is important is how strongly you feel that you are a member of your family, how strongly you identify yourself with your family. That is the predictor of well-being outcomes. Okay. And this was study one of Sunny and other colleagues in 2012. And they did study two, which focused on army unit. Okay. And then they basically replicate the results of study one. So army identification was the only predictor of depression and life satisfaction. So unlike family study, the army identification was really the only predictor of depression and life satisfaction. And also, army identification and contacts with other members predicted job satisfaction. So this is basically similar to study one, I guess. And rank and age did not predict any of the above. So unlike family study, this study too did not found rank as a reliable predictor of outcomes. And maybe this is because, rank comes with responsibility. So the higher your rank is, the more responsibility you would have, and thus you may experience more stress, or maybe you may have more concerns that you need to sort out. And the lower your rank is, you may have less control over your life, or like you basically cannot really determine what to do. But it means that you would also do not have much responsibility for your work. Basically, you need to follow, uh, how do you say, higher rank people, basically. So overall, I think the most important message from these two studies is that identification with family or army unit really predicts well-being outcomes. So yes, the more the merrier. Basically, the more groups you belong to, the happier you will be. But also, the more strongly you identify with your groups, happier you would be, or less you would experience depression. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So, social identities counteract depression because they are a basis for meaning, agency, purpose, and support. So, I think through chapter 2 and also in chapter 5, I talked about how belonging to groups can give meaning to their lives, and then also can provide clear self-concept. And then also, belonging to groups, for example, belonging to any companies maybe gives you purpose of your life, like what you do with your identity as a member of a company. So by belonging to some kinds of groups, you can find what you do with your time, basically. And if you don't have, or if you don't know what to do with your time, then your well-being will not be well off. So belonging to groups provide those resources. And in addition to that, belonging to groups or identifying with groups can provide agency and support. And first with agency. Agency has been studied with different names like control or efficacy. And there is a study showing that social identification fosters perceived personal control, not only collective efficacy, but also perceived personal control. And the definition of control is a perceived ability to alter events and achieve desired outcomes. And perceived control can be measured with several items, such as I feel in control of my life. And then you can tell how long you agree or disagree with this item. Or I am free to live my life how I wish. My experiences in life are due to my own actions. So basically, this is a real sense of agency that you have, or you can decide whatever you want with your life. You know? And then there are research showing that the more agency or the higher efficacy people feel, they tend to have better life satisfaction. Okay, so that was agency. And then uh let's see. Okay, so basically yeah, as I said, social identification fosters passive personal control, and that's because yeah, I may not be able to achieve a goal, but we can. Like, you can get social support. So social support and agency may be closely related in one way. And also social connection promotes motivation. When people were told that they are working with someone or they are a part of a huge group, then people tend to show higher motivation to engage in tasks that at hand. So when people belong or when people are aware that they are a member of a group, then they tend to show higher motivation. Okay. And also self-stereotyping, which means the capability of others. Sorry. Self-stereotyping is to stereotype yourself with stereotypes that your group has. In other words, self-stereotyping means that the self is similar to others in the group that you and others belong to. Okay. And then when people belong to groups and when people identify themselves with groups, then they would show self-stereotyping. And then when they do self-stereotyping, the capability of others comes to look similar to that of mine, that of themselves. So if you identify yourself as an individual, then all the capabilities you may have is only the capabilities you actually have. Okay? But if you define yourself as a member of a group, then you come to feel that something that your group members can do should be something that you also can do, because you and other group members are similar. Then, if your group members can do, then you should be also able to do it. So through this kinds of cognitive processes, social identities can increase agency and an increase in the satisfaction of the four psychological needs such as esteem, belonging, meaning, and support was associated with reduced levels of depression symptoms. So by belonging to groups, people can feel higher self-esteem, maybe partly because they can feel higher self-efficacy. And then also, of course, belonging to groups can provide a sense of belonging and then lower sense of loneliness. And then also it can provide meaning and support. And satisfaction of these needs is related to reduced depressive symptoms. Okay. Social identities structure depression-related thoughts and perception. So our social identities have the capacity to change in response. So our social identities have the capacity to change in response to moment-to-moment shift in social context. And how do you define yourself when you're at a football match, a funeral, or a university? So you can notice that how often you feel different about yourself, and then you change your behaviors, and then also maybe your personalities may look different depending on how you define yourself. But in the standard classic perspective of psychology, self is defined as individualistic, coherent, unified, and above all, static, which means that basically self does not change regardless of context. Whenever the self is static and fixed, does not change. This is a classic perspective of self, but through studying this course, you are already aware that people can also define themselves based on social identities, and social identities have the capacity to change in response to immediate context. So self is also very flexible and can dramatically change depending on context at hand. The context-specific fit and accessibility determines which group memberships are used to define oneself. So you may want to remember what was the fit from chapter 2. And then accessibility mentioned here refers to readiness. So basically, fit with how well a particular category explains the differences between two categories. And if it will explain the differences, then such category may be used to categorize oneself and the others. Readiness refers to how often, how much experience you have to use the category to define yourself. And if the both fit and readiness or accessibility is high, then that category or the identity, social identity is more likely to be used to define yourself. And group membership that define ourselves determines our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So this is something I have been talking since chapter 1, right? Psychology, how we think, feel, determines how we behave. But our psychology is influenced or basically determined by groups we belong, by social identities we have. So this is the figure we have seen when I talked about here cognitive behavior model, right? So when people lose their social identity, then they would experience a lack of meaning, purpose, and direction. So they would be unsure what to do with their life, in which way they should lead their life if they lose their social identity. And such lack of meaning, purpose, and direction would uh, in, uh, induce negative thinking about self, the world, and the future. And losing social identity is also closely related with a lack of support, losing social support. And then if you do not have social support, then you would have negative thinking about the world and the future. And then maybe you could also have negative thinking about yourself because, okay, I'm not a worthy person to be supported by others. Right? And this kind of negative thinking would lead to negative feelings, such as low mood, low energy, hopelessness, and guilt. And this negative feelings could be also induced by a lack of belonging, a lack of sense of community. So if you feel that you are not really belonging to any groups, then you would feel that you are hopeless or you would experience a low mood, low energy. Okay. And this kind of negative feelings will feed into behavior such as reduced activity, social withdrawal, and suicidality. And then if you do not have social identities at work, then, I mean, if your social identity is not working, then you would experience resistance to positive influence. And this is because maybe you can think that you are a member of some groups, then you are more susceptible to uh, positive influences other group members may provide with you, right? But any suggestions or advice may not be so effective if it comes from out-group members. Do you remember? We have seen some of those studies. And just like that, if you define yourself as an individual, then any advice, suggestions, positive support, and help will come from someone who do not share group memberships because you are not define yourself as a group member, then you would not have any chance to receive any support or positive influence from your in-group members because basically there is no in-group in your mind, right? So you cannot really benefit from positive influence from others. And then this would further lead to negative thoughts and negative feelings and negative behavior. Okay. So as social identities determines, structures, depression-related thoughts and perception. Uh, it is really important for us. It has strong impact on our depressive symptoms. To support this kind of idea, there is a study which looked at how belonging to multiple groups influence our cognitions. The more groups they belong to, the less they show depressive attribution style. Attribution style is how you understand a cause of behavior or outcome. Okay. And depressive attribution style, the characteristics of depressive attribution style is internal, stable, and global attributions. So I have some examples of those attribution styles. So when you fail on something, you may say, I failed because I am no good. This basically understands the cause of outcome. Well, let me say in different way. You think that the cause of failure is within yourself. You failed because you are not good. So basically, you are referring to internal attribute you have, right? Internal features of yourself. So this is called internal attribution. And you may also say, okay, I failed, but I always fail. So basically, failure was not something happen only in this context, but you believe that you always fail. This is called stable attribution. Basically, one failure, you feel that one failure is something happening all the time, and also it predicts future failure as well. The third one, I fail in everything. This is called a global attribution. So maybe people fail on something, but they may do well on other tasks. But depressive attribution style, uh, individuals with depressive attribution style tend to believe that one failure is not only the predictor of another failure in the same task, but one failure is a predictor of all the tasks in the future. So when people make these kinds of attribution styles, then they tend to have more depression symptoms. So when bad things happen, I think it is my fault. This is like a mixture of an internal and stable and global attribution. And this is also the same. This is also same. I failed because I'm stupid. So, stupid is the internal attribute. And basically it's internal attribution, but also stupidity is something you cannot really change. So it's also related to a stable attribution. And then if you are stupid, maybe you would fail in any kinds of activities that may be related to your stupidity. Then that could be understood, that could be interpreted as a global attribution. And also, depressive attribution style is related to attentional focus. Depressed individuals have a self-focusing style such that they tend to focus internally, that is, on their personal selves, following failure. So, depressed people make internal attribution, and that may be because they tend to focus on themselves rather than situations or others. And because they focus on themselves, their personal selves, they tend to believe that their personal selves would not change. Thus, they are more likely to make a stable attribution. And if the cause of failure is within oneself, then whatever they do, wherever they go, they may believe that they would fail again. So that would contribute to making global attribution. But salient social identity shifts attention away from one's personal self. And then if we fail, the task was not good. They can think that it's not only me failing on this task, but we are all failing. Then that means maybe the task was not good. Maybe the system is wrong. So basically, they can attribute the cause of failure not to themselves, but to the external factors. And also, as I have mentioned before, social identity improves collective efficacy and personal control, and thus they are less likely to make internal attribution. So cognitions can be changed not only by directly approaching cognitions, which cognitive behavior therapy often does, but approaching others and social identities can help them to change their cognitions. Okay, so this figure here, the more they belong to multiple groups, then they are less likely to make depressive attribution style. So there is a negative association between the multiple group memberships and depressive attribution style. And the more or the less they make depressive attribution style, the less they experience depression symptoms. And yeah, that's because the reasons I just explained. Okay, so I think I will just stop here and then I hope I can finish the rest of chapter 8 in the second video. Okay.